WCLN 1170 Radio and Star Communications Channel 16 proudly present the We Should Know Show, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative. Now, here's your host, J.W. Simmons, as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know It's on there. I want to thank you for being with us today. My name is J.W. Simmons. I'm your host. We're talking with Alan Thornton with Corporate Extension Office right here in Clinton. Alan, I want to thank you for taking time to come in today. And as we were reflecting off camera, it's been a while, but you've been on the show, but it's been probably 8-10 years out. And that was when we were on 421 out there. There's been a lot going on. You have been at Corporate Extension a number of years. Talk to us about how you kind of got connected with this career path, and the things that you've seen changing just in the Extension office and its affiliation with NC State, and what farmers expect out of you now.
Okay. Well, first off, NC State is our premier land-grant university in North Carolina. In North Carolina, A&T State University is the other one, and jointly we share cooperative extension offices. There's an office in every county across the state, so we've got well over 100 connections from NC State, one in every county. So I got started with extension because I wanted to stay in agriculture, and I didn't have enough opportunity. I didn't feel like at the farm to go back to the farm. I grew up on a farm in Faison. And so at that point, I said, well, I want to do something as close as I can get. And when I finished school, I was very fortunate. I had a professor that I had as an undergraduate who needed a research technician at the time. And he offered me a job, and that allowed me to continue some education at that point. And then after that, I got an opportunity to join Cooperative Extension, kind of changing gears a little bit because all of my education background is agronomic crops. So I got an opportunity to kind of jump gears a little bit and go into vegetable crops and horticulture. And that was certainly a learning experience. I had done my share of, picking and packing peppers and cukes and all that kind of stuff. But had not really been involved in the research or the growing side of those crops. So that was a little different, but I had a mentor at the time that said, well, tomatoes and tobacco are the same plant family. I said, okay. So that's kind of where I went. And I started in Johnston County, and after a year had the opportunity to come to Sampson County when Peter Westerbeek retired. And I've been here 30 years, actually. Been in Sampson County 30 years doing this job.
I knew it had been 25 or 30. I wasn't sure whether it was 30 or not. But you've literally, and I want folks to kind of conceptualize this. You've got 30 years of your life you've dedicated to nothing but agriculture. And we're just talking about your professional life. Prior to that, it was agriculture as well.
Yes, absolutely. And there's been, been a lot of changes over the years. Depending on who you ask, some good, some bad, obviously. But, we made a lot of progress. One of the things, I know we're going to talk some about technology. One of the things when I started in Extension, we had one printer in the office that everybody used. We had, the first year I was in Extension, we had a computer for everybody that you went down and checked your emails on.
And it was a big old thing, too.
So that was just kind of the beginning, in my stage. And now, everybody's got a computer on their hip.
That's right. Let's look at this kind of evolution of ag. We know where we are now. We mentioned this earlier off air. Is this $100+ billion industry? Still the number one industry in the state of North Carolina, and it doesn't seem that that's going away. I mean, the demand for it is only going up as the population increases. Tell us from your window looking out, where do you see agriculture moving from where it is now? And then I want to get into some of the technology and those kinds of things.
Well, there's agriculture is such a diverse field. So there's a lot of different directions it goes. We've got a lot of opportunities for growers, and growers have taken these opportunities where they're geographically in the right place to do a lot of roadside stands, a lot of direct sales. We even have a grower in this county that, in the edge of this county, that actually serves community-supported agriculture, which is basically they buy a subscription, their customers buy a subscription to a produce box, and then every week they provide them with a box of whatever it is that's in season. And they're carrying those to the Triangle area. Well, actually, there's one on the southern end of the county that's carrying boxes to Wilmington still. So we've got everything from that to all the way to the larger growers that are, only in wholesale markets, shipping large quantities of product. So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities out there. You got to be a little careful about where you are geographically to fit some of these models, I think. Just because of distance, to where major populations are.
When we look at the market itself overall, and I know you do a lot of work with row crops and that kind of thing, the demand for labor, physical labor, is a big challenge for ag today. And in some areas, like say for example, sweet potatoes, we've got quite a bit of footage on sweet potatoes. And one of the things I noticed is these jobs still require human connectivity. A lot of other row crops, machines can take care of it. So do you see the sustainability of labor through the way we're doing it now with migrant labor and those kinds of things? Or is there another step fixing to happen technology-wise that's going to move us to where we don't need as many people? I mean, we see all that happening in restaurants and everything else.
Right. I think there's, it's kind of a double-edged sword when you start talking about that. Where we are now with our capabilities mechanically, machinery, and those types of things, the reason we're not doing so many of these, fruit and vegetable jobs mechanically, harvesting particularly, is because we don't have the mechanism, the robotics to handle the product without doing more damage than what the hand will do.
Gotcha.
And obviously like a sweet potato, for example, you can skin it, but it's a little harder to damage that than say a squash or a pepper. Right. Much more tender, softer flesh. So really that's the next step, I guess, in getting some of those things. Pretty much all of the processing products are totally mechanically harvested. Now, in our area, we do still have a lot of hand-harvested sweet potatoes for processing. But once they come out of the field, once they get in a bin, all the other components of it are mechanically handled with a forklift, conveyors, and belts and that kind of thing. But that's really been one of the challenges. Now, we do have some chain diggers that we dig sweet potatoes with. It still is laying them on top of the ground, so we have to have the labor to pick them up and put them into the bins. But it's a little easier, probably increases yield a little bit because we recover all of the crop as opposed to the old turn plow, which we're still using a lot of that. And you have to do a little bit of scratching them out of the soil to get those. But I think there's opportunities that will be coming. The other thing, in all honesty, that I think limits some of that is we have done such a good job of providing safe, healthy food and abundant supply to consumers that we've kind of spoiled the consumers. If it has just a little teeny bit of blemish on it, then, well, it's not marketable. But there's still absolutely nothing wrong with the product. I've told people this story for years. Growing up, we always had garden stuff. I thought sweet corn grew with a worm on the end of it until I got grown. I didn't know there was any other way. We just knocked it off, and
that was the norm,
and went on.
Absolutely.
But the consumer population is really holding us to very high standards, and rightfully so. But there is a limit of of product that's out there that can be really well utilized, but because it's not perfect, we're having to send it to a secondary market.
And it sounds like sometimes that we set the expectation at a certain place, and then if there's the least little variant, then as you said, the consumer's going, wait a minute, this is not as good as it was last year. But again, it's the product you're going to actually put in the pot is just as good as the one last year.
Yes. A sweet potato with a little piece of skin knocked off the side of it, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
It's still a good baked sweet potato.
Still a good sweet potato.
The thing that kind of comes to mind is as you're talking, I'm seeing this evolution. I'm also reading things that's indicating that I think it was our number 2 crop, and was all kind of amazed me because I thought it was pretty much going away, and that's tobacco.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm kind of hearing that some of the demand for that is dropping radically, and some of the farmers may be looking at doing some other things.
That has been, in a decline for a number of years, as far as overall acreage, and certainly the number of growers is down. It's much larger growers. And that gets to be an economy of scale is really what a lot of that boils down to. But the other thing that they are doing with tobacco particularly, and other crops, but particularly tobacco as it affects our area, they're looking at all of the natural chemical compounds within that plant and finding, just many other uses, not just rolling it into a cigarette or, tobacco, pipe tobacco or whatever, but they're actually finding, lots of other uses for those alkaloids and chemistries that they're finding in there, all the way to some medical things, I understand.
I want to follow that thread when we come back from a break and kind of get into some of those things, because you hit some couple of points. So it was just critically important. And I know the last time we had you on the show years ago, we were talking about the research center, and we did some camera work out there. But there's so many plants now, as you said, that we're discovering because of research that might not be the primary thing we used a few years ago, and now we need that plant for this other thing. So
exactly.
We'll kind of follow that thread. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're talking with Alan Thornton, the Corporate Extension Agent right here in Clinton, about not only the historical perspective, but right now what's happening with the plants that we eat and use. We'll be back in a moment.
Just because something may work doesn't mean it's right for your business. Let Star Communications' knowledgeable consultants help you customize a hosted voice system that's right for you. Our dedicated experts work with you to understand your business needs and guide you at every step, from choosing and installing services to ongoing maintenance and support. Contact Star today.
Eastern North Carolina is a beautiful place where we gladly choose to call home. And we strive to provide the best communications services. Star is committed to improving communications to all our service areas because we want to improve the communities where we not only work, but also live. Star Communications. We are neighbors serving neighbors.
Welcome back, folks. We Should Know is on there. Thanks for being with us today. Star Communications Channel 16 on the TV side, simulcast on WCLN Radio. We're talking with Alan Thornton, the Corporate Extension Agent here. Alan, thank you for coming in again. Sorry it's been so many years. Should have had you back. But we were talking in the first part of the show about many things. I will kind of zero in on a couple of those. We left the first part and with a discussion about tobacco. Tobacco, you and I both kind of grew up in that world. It was, as the old saying goes, what helped me go to college, and probably you as well. It was a money crop for the farm. Now it's grown not only in a different way, it's harvested in a different way. You were pointing out on break as we were talking that some of the possibilities for tobacco is now looking different than using it for cigarettes and smoking and snuff or whatever they use it for. Yeah. So just kind of what do you see is tobacco and other plants, new research finding things that can be actually beneficial for human beings?
Sure. There's always folks looking at new opportunities, both in terms of crops. One of the things that I did when I was at NC State years ago as a research technician, part of our program was new and emerging crops. We looked at a lot of new crops. I did a lot of work with canola, which has come along and is still being produced. Mm-hmm. I did work with triticale, which is, a little higher nutrient material, mostly as a feedstock. We did some work with Canaf. That didn't go anywhere. But, when you start looking at new crops, you always have some that the production and the market kind of comes together and everything works and moves in the right direction. You have others like the Canaf deal that, we got the production, we had the right idea for the market, but it was kind of a startup deal for the market side of it, and they just didn't come together.
What was Canaf? Canaf
is, it's a first cousin to hemp and marijuana.
Okay.
Cotton.
Okay.
In fact, the varieties we grew, we chose specifically because they did not have the marijuana shaped leaf.
Really?
Yes. But it's, grows 8-10 feet tall. You'd process it down as a fiber crop.
Yeah.
Is what you would use it for. But that didn't come together. One of the ones that's coming along right now is sesame. And everybody I'm sure has seen sesame and probably eaten many a hamburger bun with sesames on them.
Yeah, sesame seed buns and all those kinds of things.
Yep. So that's something that, obviously is an established industry in the country, but we haven't grown it in this area. This past year we had, let's say a handful of growers, handful of acres where we, tried to grow it, see what we can do with it. It looked pretty good. It yielded pretty good. The market for them turned out fairly good, but they had to haul it, I think, to South Carolina is where they carried it to a receiving station. Mm-hmm. I understand next year they're actually going to increase acres and we're actually going to have a receiving station somewhere in North Carolina. So that one is showing some promise at the moment. But, with tobacco, with crops as they change, cotton price going up and down, labor being an issue, some folks getting out of higher labor crops. We're always looking for, some sort of crop opportunity that, fits the farm operations that we have. It may be a little better income producer and those types of things.
As those crops, some of them start, I'll call it retiring and going away, or maybe the family that owns that farm, there's nobody left there to do it, and they're looking at just moving on. And I've seen these sales, and you have before with tractors and different things. Is that land looked at in another vision? Are people looking to buy the property to make something farming out of it? Or, as we've seen on the rural landscape, numerous houses, road in particularly northern part of Sampson County?
Yeah, it kind of depends on, location to a great extent, I think, as to how much that can happen. From as a true farm boy, I mean, it kind of hurts my feelings to see that happen, especially if it's really good farmland. But once that generation of folks that are on the farm, are gone, and the next generation has it, if they don't have an interest in the farm, or, maybe they have moved away and taken other jobs and they're not coming back to an area, that's when we see a lot of that sold. Now, if it's more in a rural area still, or, then a lot of that does stay in farmland. Mm-hmm. They either will hold on to it and lease it out to somebody that's farming, or they may actually sell it to a farmer who's still in farming.
You mentioned along that line, I'm going to try to get this in too. We've got a number of farmers that I know and work with on a regular basis that are large enough that they actually do their own exporting to countries throughout the world.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's kind of amazing when you think about it, especially from where we grew up, to imagine that a farmer now has a major distribution of crops he's growing, and he or she or the whole family or however how it's operated is now shipping all over the world. It's phenomenal.
Absolutely. You know, obviously one of the earlier shippers for overseas stuff would have been the animal industry.
Exactly.
You know, with frozen product and that kind of thing. We're actually doing that with vegetable products now. Sweet potatoes is a huge export crop for us. Prior to the COVID issue, which, you know, obviously changed the world entirely, you know, we were probably shipping 45% of our sweet potato acreage or volume overseas.
Wow.
We're still shipping probably in the neighborhood of 30%, but that changed the dynamics of what was going overseas. And because of that, you know, the market opportunity shrunk a little, and our acreage has shrunk a little bit to try to match that. But I think some of that'll come back.
When I look at that, is that just obviously a supply demand situation, or is the demand there and we're just not able to handle the supply now to reverse that and send more overseas?
It's really been the demand has been growing in those overseas countries that we have been shipping to. The challenge that we have as North Carolina producers and staying relevant in those markets is there's so many other countries and other areas of the world that have increased their production. They're closer to those markets, and therefore they can ship it in there. I won't say better quality necessarily, but they can ship it in there without as much expense.
Yeah, less cost.
Less cost. Yeah.
That's kind of fascinating. So what else are you looking at that may be somewhat innovative in the actual products that we're developing right here in this area? And that's one of the things that you and I talked about that I'd like to push out to people, because unless you're in the seat you're in, a lot of this stuff folks won't see it. They won't, and unless media covers it, they don't know that. But they might be living within a mile of something that's being grown as a test market that's going to revolutionize something.
Well, sweet potatoes is a great example to talk about. If you think back to the way we used to do potatoes, and I'm talking about before I even started work, you know, we were packing potatoes and selling potatoes in a 1 bushel basket. With a lid on it. The old round wood bushel basket. You know?
Remember it well.
And that's the way we sold potatoes. They were hand graded. They were hand placed into boxes. And everything was hand stacked.
And they were heavy.
And, you know, we have progressed from there just on the packing side of things. We've progressed from there to, you know, going to carrying sizers is one of the types of sizers we were using, and there's still some being used. But essentially, it was just a moving bar grater that would help size the potatoes. Still had people, you know, picking out something that got missed or needed to be thrown out.
Right.
But we've gone from there, and now the larger packing lines are all the way to the point that it's taking an electronic image of that potato, singulated as it comes down the line. And that potato, when it gets to the appropriate place to go into the box, you know, it's got little pedals, almost like a piano key, that will knock them off and they'll fall into the appropriate box. We were packing, you know, a jumbo size, a number 1 size, and some smaller canner sizes back in the day. You may run 12 different sizes off of a line today. If a steakhouse says, I need a 6 to 8 ounce potato, we put a 6 to 8 ounce potato in that box and send it to them.
Amazing. And that also cuts down on the labor market itself, doesn't it?
Yes.
So you have that potato ready to go. Once it hits that box, from that processing place, it can go to wherever in the world.
That's right. And of course, when that was first getting started, and that was one of the things that the North Carolina Sweet Potato Commission, and of course a number of growers individually, did a tremendous job of trying to get into some of those markets. But when that first started, the kind of the running joke is nobody wants a sweet potato that hangs off both sides of their plate when they get it. So, we had to kind of start moving towards being able to get those industries, the sizes that they needed. Same with food, the food processing side of it. They're not just concerned about the size. In fact, a lot of times bigger is better for them because they get more out of an individual potato.
But that's a good way to look at it, because I'm sitting here envisioning the reality that size does matter, and it matters because of the application. Once you've got the technology, and it's what we're getting into now is this conversation about technology. Well, once you get that technology in place, it runs smooth, and everything that looks like, from where I see it, would be a complicated mess. It's all designed to be in that process and work that way. So when we come back, I'd like to kind of extend that conversation and look at not only that, but other things you see that are going through mechanization processes that's not only making it easier, but making it easier to handle and ship. And it also cuts down on the labor costs.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking about a lot of things related to agriculture. We're just going to touch on some many products we need to cover today. Stay tuned. Call a friend. Alan Thornton is our guest.
For the ultimate Wi-Fi experience, you need Whole Home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Star's Whole Home Wi-Fi provides ultimate coverage, ultimate performance, and ultimate power all the time. Star's Whole Home Wi-Fi systems feature the latest Wi-Fi 6 technology and are equipped with unrivaled bandwidth and 4 times more simultaneous connections. So you can connect tons of devices throughout your home with no lag and no downtime. Plus, with 24/7 support and remote troubleshooting, you can rest assured that Star is always there to help you should any issues arise. Star's Whole Home Wi-Fi also comes with the Command IQ mobile app, putting you in control of your home network and making it easy to set up and connect devices, run network speed tests, pause Wi-Fi, and set parental controls all from the palm of your hand. It's the ultimate Wi-Fi experience. Contact Star today to get started.
Let's get out of here.
Protect what matters most in your life with security from Star Communications.
When it comes to new, liquidated, and overstocked merchandise at unbeatable prices, look no further than J&B Liquidations. Shop our warehouse for discounts 40 to 90% off home goods, furniture, pet, baby, toys, tools, and more. The warehouse is stocked daily, and our staff is here and ready to help. Open to the public Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. until 6 p.m.
Welcome back, folks. We Should Know is on there. J.W. Simmons here, your host. Our guest is Alan Thornton. Alan, we've covered a lot of stuff in the first couple of segments here, and one of them is your history and dedication to the service of agriculture, and particularly row crops in the whole area here. We're kind of on that verge of looking at a lot of the technology that's occurring. One of the things you mentioned in sweet potatoes, the processing and distribution of the potato. The very crucial piece, which I'd really never given that much thought until I talked to folks like you, is that sizing is so critical. And now, from what I can hear, you were emphasizing the point that it's been automated.
There's a tremendous amount of automation in that. Now, we've still got some guys that do hand packing, for smaller quantities. And they've developed, tremendous markets for that. But we do have most of the industry has gone to at least some sort of automation in what we're packing. The same is true in, blueberries, which we have a lot in this county, strawberries, especially when you start talking about the processing things that are flash freezed. They have color sorters so that they're kicking out any of the berries that are a little bit immature, like blueberries. They're color sorting them. Things of that nature, and it's a fast freeze where they're individual. I mean, they're almost like little rocks, as opposed to when we freeze them at home, picking a handful, we kind of have a clump
That's
a lot
right.
of times,
That's exactly
when
right.
we freeze them. And that's been a tremendous thing from a market standpoint for those crops. But technology has really changed across the board. I can remember, and I'm sure you can too, I can remember folks that plowed with a mule. It was not until probably the 50s or so that tractors really kind of came on the farm and started making an impact. And that was the 140, or the Super A.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we've got tractors that you really, they're advanced enough, some of them, that you don't even have to have a driver in them. Now, we don't have that so much here because we've got tremendous small amount of small fields. But we do have, one of the first things that came in, with technology in agriculture was a lot of this GPS, satellite technology, so that you can run the road, straight, which most of us tried to do anyway, but we weren't quite the same. But you can go back to within an inch of where you ran the road last year. Or if you want to move over, a foot, you can set that computer and it'll move you over.
Just that precise.
Just that precise. Like, for example, a lot of our plasticulture guys that use that technology, they'll have their hydrant spaced in the field, which is a permanent irrigation system.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll go back each year, or they're rotating crops, obviously, but whenever it comes time to go back in that field, they'll go back and set their rows up so that they can go right to that hydrant at the proper place and set up the next year's crop.
So it's all coordinated around the hydrant using GPS?
In the case of plasticulture, yes. We're going back to our hydrant.
Because they can't have any variance, because it would break it off or something.
Well, no. When I say the hydrant, I mean it's the area, the hydrant area where the water's coming from.
Okay.
If they were off, they would have to use some sort of hose or something to move it around. But the closer, it's like putting a pin in a gate.
Yeah.
If you get everything lined up, you just drop it right in.
That's right.
If it's not lined up, you got to sit there and wiggle it and all kinds of things to make it work. So that's one of the things that kind of came in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then probably the next thing that I recall, it really was the radar technology. So we're using radar technology to control our sprayers. We have a number of companies, across the country and around the world for that matter, that have radar spray systems, so that the radar is mounted on the tractor and it monitors the speed. So that when you slow down or speed up, it's connected through that the sprayer system. Mm-hmm. And so if you slow down, it changes the output on the sprayer. So you're always getting the right amount of spray material
specifically
as
measured.
You're going. Yes.
That's amazing.
For example, if you're in a real sandy field and you start getting a little tire slippage, you're slowing down. That radar picks it up and keeps you from getting that too high a rate of whatever it is you're applying.
Yeah.
Same thing is true for overlap. We have technology now within the sprayers that if you happen to overlap, it'll start cutting nozzles off on the end of the boom so you don't overlap.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing what it can do. Now, that's way beyond my pay grade to understand exactly how it works.
But it's there and being used.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Does all that kind of back up this reality of cost cutting in production, trying to have a better overall productivity, not just necessarily the amount that's being produced, but how you produce it? Absolutely.
I mean, from a farm economic standpoint, that's the driving force. Because these chemicals are getting more expensive. The seed is more expensive. The fertilizer is more expensive. As we were talking off air, the equipment is way more expensive. So you're trying to trim all of those things down and minimize. But the other benefit in a grower's mind, as well as the industry as a whole, is the whole environmental thing.
Yeah.
If we're applying nutrients, we want to apply the right amount of nutrients to get what we can get out of the crop without doing too much and having it run off or leach down through the ground. The same is true with the chemicals we use, say, to spray weeds or whatever. We're trying to get the right amount there and no more because of cost, but it's also environmentally responsible to do that as well.
when we look at those issues in the application and growth and actually creating the product to go to market, is there, I guess, oversight from the EPA and places like that farmers now have to deal with that maybe back during our day they didn't? And is that something that technology has to be created around to make sure that it's meeting all those standards?
You know, the way we used to do things, if you look at it that way, you know, years ago, we could still meet the requirements that we're, you know, expected to meet now. The newer technology has allowed us to meet those requirements easier. And a lot of it, is about paperwork, in all honesty, you know, keeping up with the records of what you've done, where you've put it, how much you put. We're not quite there on nutrients, although it may come. We are there on nutrients when it comes to animal waste.
Yeah.
There's a number of regulations that has to be done there. But when it comes to pesticides, pesticides come in a whole range of safety, I guess is what you would call it. All the way from something that would be tagged as with a caution label, all the way to something that's, you know, considered a danger level. And the higher you go, they're classified as restricted use. The more dangerous they are, they're classified as restricted use. Whether that's a danger to you as a handler, or whether that's a danger environmentally to birds or runoff or leaching, whatever it may be. So when we get into those categories, growers have to keep a record of what they've applied, how much they've applied, and when they've applied it. In those regards.
I want to circle back on something you just said that struck a note too. I'm seeing in the grocery store a lot, and of course a lot of people think that everything comes from the back room at a grocery store, but on the packaging, oftentimes it'll say 100% organic. Now that product, I'm smart enough to know, had to have some kind of nutrient push. And we got a large hog and chicken operation in the area. When it says organic, can the waste from those animal products be considered organic?
Yes. There's back in, I don't say 5 to 10 years ago, organic was like the Wild West. You know, if you wanted to call it organic, you could call it organic.
Yeah.
Now there's actually a USDA organic standard, and they have to meet a certain certification to call it, you know, organic. Most of the organics, we do use a lot of poultry litter, not so much swine litter, but a lot of poultry litter. But the organics, where we're growing organically, we try to have that composted rather than straight.
Gotcha.
But there are a number of fertilizer materials and some biological fungicides, insecticides, and things like that are allowed in that production.
Well, and that's part of the, I guess, the mindset that there's a number of folks that look at it. Well, if it's got, quote, USDA organic or what have you, then that means it's better for me because I'm, quote, not getting a chemical. Or even with chickens, you mentioned chickens, you see oftentimes this is 100% non chemical or something in the chicken, and you're thinking, well, what did you expect? I mean, it gets confusing for the consumer.
It does get very confusing. I recall, and this is a subject that really can go anywhere.
Yes.
But I recall years ago when some of the organic push, I guess, really got started. I remember seeing a presentation from a professor from Iowa. And at that time, the push was, well, if it's natural, it's got to be better. And this particular presentation, he showed comparatively, farm produced things, and not necessarily the same thing, but natural things that were in the environment, had just wild,
just random, yeah.
And there's some pretty nasty things out there in the environment. So to say natural doesn't necessarily take you to a safe place.
No,
there's some very poisonous mushrooms, for example, out there.
Absolutely.
But I'm not knocking, certainly not knocking the organics or the natural side of it. But it is confusing because of the way it has kind of been set up. So it's a great thing, I think, that the USDA finally got to the point that they set up this standard so that if somebody labels it organic, it has to meet that certain standard. Nutrient wise,
we're going to take another break. When we come back, I want to talk more about some of the technologies out there, follow up on the GPS thing. Also, I want to make sure we cover some events coming up in March.
Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. Stay tuned.
Providing fewer commutes, more backyard offices, and crystal clear meetings. Providing less, you froze up, and more presence in your presentations. Providing a better internet experience. Providing possible.
You're out for an evening on the town. Finally a chance to relax and forget that you left your front door completely unlocked. Fortunately, you just installed a security system from Star Communications. With just your cell phone, you can check on your house, lock it down, light it up, and get back to relaxing.
You forgot to put Buster in his crate.
Unfortunately, we can't help with that. Security and automation from Star Communications. Call today to find out more.
Most aging adults want to stay in their homes as long as possible. And as your loved ones get older, you want to support them, even when you can't be there. Star is proud to offer Star Alert. This new system is now mobile and has GPS compatibility, so your loved ones can live their lives and you can have peace of mind, knowing they can get the help they need with just the simple push of a button. The new Star Alert also offers automatic fall detection, so help will be alerted even if they can't press the button. Call and ask about Star Alert today.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We Should Know's on the air. We're coming up on the last part of the show today, and we're talking about something near and dear to everybody's heart. You might not realize it, but we're talking about the food you eat, and we're talking about agriculture with Alan Thornton. Alan, again, thank you for being here, and I just feel compelled to thank you for your years of service. 30 years, that's amazing, and that's just with the Cooperative Extension Service. You were involved in ag in various ways as a young person, as I was. That's a lot of time to dedicate to that particular field.
What's amazing is that I just started last week.
Or you started when you were 12. It's either one or more.
Right.
Okay. So I wanted you to follow up. We're talking about some of the technology, but I want to follow up on a couple of things. And one of them is something you mentioned a while ago about GPS, which is kind of a positioning satellite thing. Is that being effective here? And what are some of the potential future uses for GPS technology and equipment for agriculture?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, one of the uses that's in place already is some of the sprayer technology and minimizing overlap. Probably the nutrient spreading with the precision spreading of nutrients came in first. But then I guess the thing that has followed it that has really tremendously helped our row crop growers, corn, beans, cotton, that kind of stuff, is that technology on a planter, so that you're not overlapping when you plant. It knows that, okay, I've already planted this section, so I'm going to cut this planter hopper off, and it's not overlapping.
And you don't have to tell it that. It knows.
The GPS is picking that up. Now, obviously, there's a lot more above my pay grade that goes into how you make that happen. But it plants when you plant across the ends of the rows to fill up the field. It knows where you've already planted out to and will cut those hoppers off as you go across. Particularly important for us in most of eastern North Carolina, where we have a lot of irregular shaped fields, small fields. We don't have the big square mile blocks like they have in the Midwest. So that's one place that, that technology has really come into play. The other thing that is developing, I guess I would call it, is the whole, idea of using drones. To map fields, to scout fields, looking at places where, for example, you may not have as good a stand as another area, and you can do it and see it from the air. Because I know everybody has seen aerial pictures, for example, of a field in the past. And you always see places in it, a little thicker looking than another, a little lighter places. We're trying to pick some of those places out so that you can go back and address them if there's something you can do to make them better. And actually it's advanced. The next level, which is being done now, and beginning to be done around here, is actually drone, fertilizer and spray applications.
Like the old flying, the planes that used to do it, now drones is doing
it with remote drones. Now I have not seen one operate, but I understand we do have 2 or 3 in the county that are trying to get going with that. Obviously, the advantage to that is particularly is if it were wet and you couldn't get in the field, you could do that. But you could also do that and save a lot of tractor hours, a lot of man hours, and that kind of thing as well.
We're
and crop size,
and we're hoping to get some footage on some of that. We've talked to some folks that are using that, and we want to get. But the thing I'm looking to find out with that is how does the payload of that drone, how effective is it, and how large an area can you cover? The expense cost ratio is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and I don't have an answer for that. I have been told by some folks that are starting to look into it that you probably can cover 20 acres with one.
Wow.
These things are not the shoebox sized drones that you've seen people fly on YouTube.
Yeah.
These things are like big as the hood of a car. Or,
wow.
That kind of thing. Big as the back of a pickup truck.
So they can carry a payload.
They can carry a payload.
And I think that the future there is kind of interesting. We could think about it, but we know we've got drone technology that can be manipulated from the United States and flying all over the Middle East.
Right.
So we know we can take it where we need to go. So it's amazing at what that technology can be in the future.
Right. And like so many other things, not just in agriculture, but in the world in general. When this technology comes out, whatever the new technology is, it really is how quick it comes in is dictated by what does it cost and, is it saving money? Because you can't spend $1,000 to save $500.
That's right.
So how quickly those things develop really depends on those things. And like most technologies, the more it's out there, the more economical it is to put into place.
And everything does have that cost benefit analysis to it
absolutely.
That you have to put to.
Yeah, if you're in agriculture and you're not following that cost and benefit and net returns, if you're just looking at I made a lot of money, I brought in a lot of money,
right,
and not the net, then you're not going to be farming long.
We've talked about a lot of things today, and of course, there's so many that we won't get into, and it relates to advancements in technology. But one of the things also that farmers have to look at is this supply chain issue. That is getting their product to wherever it needs to be delivered to. And at that point in time, a lot of them, from what I'm told, they have to have an interceptor between them and getting it to that product, whether it's a ship, plane, those kinds of things, especially obviously overseas stuff. Is there technologies changing there, and what might they be?
Well, I think the biggest technology that would be changing there is and it's been around a while, but the ability to have these controlled atmosphere containers.
Yes.
So that you can put them at a certain condition and it'll maintain that condition all the way through. And obviously the overall value of the commodity that you're shipping and the durability of it or longevity of it, lifetime, I guess is really what we're talking about. That dictates a lot of what happens. I mean, obviously we could put a pallet of sweet potatoes on an airplane and get it there a lot faster.
Mm-hmm.
The cost benefit is not there.
Right.
For that. You take a commodity that's got a very, very high, per unit value, and you can afford to do, some quicker things
mm-hmm.
that are going to cost you more. So that determines a lot of how we do some of those things and how they get seen.
You mentioned blueberries with the flash freeze thing mm-hmm. and so forth, and I guess other vegetables. I know
we do strawberries that way.
Yeah, and over in Duplin County, somewhere there's an operation that does that freezes it and stores it. I don't remember the name.
Cottle there in Faison actually does that.
Yes, exactly.
They have a system to do
That's
that.
pretty amazing. I mean, because those vegetables then will last, I'm assuming, a pretty extended period of time.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure what the lifetime is on them, but it would be quite long.
Yeah, and I'm a big blueberry person, so oftentimes when the fresh season's out, I go to the grocery store and it says facing blueberries, and so I'm looking stuff. I know probably somebody was involved in this, but they're always the better product. Looks like to me.
Right. Well, fresher is always better, and the more local you can get something, the fresher it's likely to be. Doesn't guarantee it, but it's more likely. The challenge to that though is that we can't grow everything all the time in most places.
That's right.
But what we have done, we were talking a little earlier about the consumer kind of being spoiled a little. You can go in a grocery store almost anywhere in America, even in rural areas, and you can find just about anything you want.
And strawberries is an example.
In the fresh aisle.
Yeah, strawberries is an example in the fresh aisle.
Exactly. We just can't produce it here all the time.
Yeah, and I mean, I've just this week, I've had fresh strawberries, and I'm thinking, how am I? I was the other day I was looking at it. Great strawberries, taste good and everything. I'm thinking, how is this happening? It ain't strawberry season. Used to it had to be in season.
Right. And that's one of the things, particularly in the produce industry. We have a lot of people here and all over primarily, I guess, the East Coast for us, up down the East Coast. We have a lot of growers and packers that work together a lot because now you have to supply something almost year round.
Right.
So you've got to be working with somebody that can get that crop when it starts, say, in South Florida, and still be able to provide that crop all the way through Maryland, Eastern Shore, New Jersey, or out to Michigan, wherever it may be. And we can't do that alone, and they can't do that alone.
I had an interesting conversation, and of course, this is on the YouTube page or STARS page with Senator Lott Fairclough, and I talked to him about vegetables and stuff. He grew corn and this kind of thing, and he was telling me he remembered when the only corn you got was just a regular corn. They won't nothing called sweet corn, and he said it, and that's what he said. That's what everybody eats.
That's right.
But he talked about, and what reminded me of that is he was talking about that food chain all up and down the coast. Very smart guy. I enjoyed that so much, but I learned so much too. When we talk about this, I want to segue a bit right now to another area, and this is the area where products, particularly produce and row crops, are being grown inside all the nutrients they need to grow the product, but it just doesn't include dirt. It's got the artificial light that and there's a number of places I'm understanding it's already testing that. Is that part of the new technology world as well?
That's certainly part of the new technology world, but it's not totally new. We actually have some growers in eastern North Carolina, all over North Carolina for that matter, that are growing hydroponically. That's what we would call it.
Okay.
Which is basically growing without soil, So they're grown. Now, the ones that I'm aware of are using a greenhouse, but they're using a system that does not require soil. They're either grown in, like a rock wool type media with water flowing through them, either ebb and flow or continuous flow. And then they're maintaining the nutrient content, of that water as it goes through. But there is technology all the way out there to growing something completely inside of a closed container with no light whatsoever. Whether or not that will reach the point of economics, that's yet to be determined.
Just it's a field that it seems that to me that we're in the right place geographically with the universities we have in the area, and you've worked at some of those where the research is being done. We got a research station right here on 403 that the research is being done, the application in the field is being done of the latest things happening in agriculture.
Absolutely. We're very fortunate in North Carolina to have North Carolina Cooperative Extension. We've got NC State, North Carolina A&T State University that partner together for cooperative extension. We've got great researchers behind us on campus that back these up. We've got 16 research stations across the state, and tremendous grower cooperation because Extension has done so much over the years, and NC State.
But one of the things I tell folks sometimes, if it's anything to do with growing or eating something, I've got the Extension office on speed dial. I don't Google it. I'll call and talk to a specialist because they got people there, and some of your associates that specialize in specific areas.
Yes. Yep.
And that includes animals and everything else, protein sources, you name it. The Master Gardener program out there is a whole nother program that we like to get into during the spring of the year. But I want to mention very quickly that coming up this March there's a week in March that is National Ag Week. I mean, we pause for a moment. I don't understand why we don't do the whole month, but at least we got a week that we pause and say.
We do because we eat every day.
Exactly. But we actually recognize it because we sit down at the table. But there's 2 days, and I think I've got these right. We'll kind of double check, but we'll put them on the screen. March 19th, got an event at the Civic Center. Just basically recognizing the farmers. I understand the dean from North Carolina State University will be there for that event on the 19th.
Yep. Dr. Fox will be there as our main speaker, and he's a relatively new dean.
Yep. I met him last year
at the school.
Yeah. Very not from North Carolina, but a very
personable individual.
Absolutely. And then the 23rd was the last one of these called Ag Day that was done. I was amazed at the population of people. It was just huge, and everything about ag. So wanted to get those in, and I think we've kind of covered, at least touched on a lot of topics that you could come back and spend a semester with us, and we might know what we're talking about. But we need more education, I think, from Corporate Extension on media connections like this and others. So thank you for being with us today and taking time.
Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. We look forward to seeing you again right here on We Should Know each and every week on Tuesdays at 2:30, 7 p.m. on Tuesday and Thursday as well. And may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.